Holy smokes, 600 billion pesos of money is going to be asked by the government. They just asked 300 billion from the BSP, and they're asking for another 300 billion to fight off COVID-19. And in my opinion, I think we're just about getting started. Pasimula lang po ito, okay? Because obviously, our governments are doing their best, but today, let's talk about how this can affect the economy, how there's a possibility that this might cause inflation, and most of all, let's talk about how you can protect yourself during inflationary times. Let's go. Now, 600 billion is a lot of money, specifically for our specific economy, the Philippines po. 600 billion pesos has a lot of money, and I know the government is going to be using that to fight off the COVID pandemic in the country. Napakalaki po naman talagang problema tong pandemic na to. So they're gonna need all the money they can get, right? But the more important thing that you, as a citizen, as an income earner, or as a businessman, should know is to how do I protect myself? How do I protect my money during times of inflation, during inflationary times? Now, going into this discussion, I'm going to assume na alam na po natin kung ano yung inflation. Basic understanding po ng inflation is very simple. Inflation po is when the value of the currency or the value of our money goes down in value. So, paliit ng paliit po ang value ng currency or ng money natin. And a really good example for this is that kung sinabi ng nanay mo na yung baon namin before is 5 pesos lang, that's because they haven't reached this inflationary point in their lives. You try giving your kid 5 peso baon today and they would basically grow hungry, right? So, another good example is that yung pamasahe sa jeep before, umabot pa ako sa 75 cents na pamasahe sa jeep. Ngayon, 5 or 6 or G's or 10 pesos na yata. So what's causing all this, downgrading of value in the money is called inflation. So technically, 100 pesos worth of grocery back 20 years before is no longer as heavy as 100 pesos worth of grocery today. Because the 100 pesos technically can buy less and less goods because goods are rising up, or there's always inflation in an economy. So inflation is technically bad for the economy, right? So it's bad. So we have to avoid it as much as possible. So ano po bang gusto natin? Yung tinatawag na opposite sa inflation, yung tinatawag na deflation. Now, believe it or not, deflation is worse than inflation itself. This is the type, ito po yung type na wherein you keep money maybe under your bed or you keep money in your piggy bank, and then the value of that money suddenly grows, which is totally opposite of the inflation. So for example, if you keep 100 pesos under your bed right now, and in a few months time, the value of the 100 pesos actually grows. A good example is that if I see this ROG is worth 60,000 pesos right now. This ROG phone, 60,000 pesos. So, intayin ko na lang na bumaba ng presyo para maging 30,000 pesos na kasi mas mahal na siya, or mas mahal na yung value ng money natin, di ba? Now, as much as we love the sound of that, that's actually very bad. It means there's a lot of fear in the economy. It means that people are not spending their money. And if people are not spending their money, it means that the government will not be able to function and run properly because people are just afraid to spend. So deflation is way worse than inflation. But what we're trying to discuss here, or what we are trying to prevent, is we're trying to prevent if there's this thing called hyperinflation, or ito po yung sudden surge of economic goods and sudden surge of prices for all economic goods. Nangyari na po ito sa ibang bansa, katulad ng Venezuela, katulad ng noong after World War I, wherein nakikita po natin lahat yung mga samples sa internet. I think na if you buy a loaf of bread, you have to have a wheelbarrow of money just to buy a loaf of bread. And Zimbabwe is also happening, or Zimbabwe also has meron silang tinatawag na hyperinflation din ngayon sa Zimbabwe. Okay, so that's basically what we're trying to prevent and what we're trying to protect ourselves from, because normal inflation is, you know, slowly increase of prices, but hyperinflation is that the price of a loaf of bread would go up 300 times or 1,000 times within the next 24 to 48 hours. Now that practically is very, very bad for us. Now, inflation is also used by a lot of our financial advisors. Yung sinasabi po nila na cash is actually trash. So bakit mo iniimpok yung pera mo sa banko where it actually gives less than 1% interest rate? So you should try and invest it in a vehicle that earns 2%, 3%, or 4%, which makes a lot of sense because most financial advisors would tell you there's this thing called inflation where the value of your money actually goes down. And they're actually right, okay? So it makes a lot of sense not to put all your cash in the bank account. Instead, invest it in investment instruments like insurance or stocks or real estate na pwede siyang combat against inflation. And with that, let's go ahead to the first way or the first practical way for you to protect yourself or protect your money against inflationary times. Okay, the first way to protect yourself against inflationary times, or how to protect the value of your money against inflation, is number one, invest in stocks. Tama po yan. So, may kaibigan po ako, si Brian. Shout out kay Brian pala. I'll put a link on his Facebook profile below. He is basically my stockbroker. And if gusto nyo, you can ask him about investing in stocks, especially, specifically right now, yung broker niya is U-Trade yata. So, I'm gonna put a link on his profile below. So, make sure you message him. I'll give you the link. You message him on how to invest in stocks. Now, bakit po stocks yung number one ally natin when it comes to inflation? The value po kasi ng stocks in an economy, especially in our Philippine economy, or I think in any other economy, normally goes with inflation. So if you hear the saying, say, you know, the stock market went up by 6%, this year, or it went up 20% last year, right? So if you hear things like that, that's because the stock market usually goes slightly higher than inflation. So if 6% yung growth ng market, so most practically, maybe inflation is around 3% or 2% inflation. So technically, you just earned around 4%. So stocks still remain, up until today, stocks still remain as one of the best investment vehicles that you can use to protect yourself against inflationary times like this. Again, I'm gonna put a link down below to Brian's profile, my broker for U-Trade. And I love this guy. Napakagaling po itong broker na to. Okay, sabihin nyo lang na ni-refer kayo ni Aaron at sa vlog niya. Okay, I'm gonna put a link down below. So I suggest you start to open your U-Trade account also with Brian and his broker. And anyway, I'll put the link down below on his Facebook profile. Now, the second way for you to protect yourself against inflation is, of course, real estate. Okay, so if you invest in real estate, you're actually protecting yourself against inflationary times. Now, let me explain this. Okay, so here's how it works for real estate. Now, if you acquire real estate, I think 80 or 90% of the people who acquire real estate is that dinileverage po nila yung sarili nila through debt. Okay, now through utang, so probably a fixed rate mortgage from any bank or from the bank. Now, by the way, before anything else, if you want to learn how to establish your credit early, I'll put a link on a video below wherein we compared cash versus credit card. It actually contains valuable information on how can you establish your credit early, so by the time you leverage yourself from the bank and take a real estate loan or a business loan, you would be better equipped. Okay, so I'll put the link on the video down below and also at the end of this video. Okay, for example, if you took out a 30-year fixed rate mortgage from your house, okay, and then pinaparentahan mo tong bahay na to or condo na to. So let's just not tackle even pagpaparenta, okay? Let's just say binabayaran mo siya. So normally, let's say you get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage with a rate of 4%, okay? Now, the thing about your mortgage is that it will always be fixed to 4%. Now, inflation, however, changes, okay? During inflationary times, your debt actually remains the same. So, if 4% yung mortgage mo, so tapos yung inflation for that year is around 2%, and it increases and it increases, but your level of debt remains, or the inflation, the percentage of your debt remains, the 4% of the debt actually feels like you're only paying around 2%, right? So if you had a property and basically you had the property rented, it makes more advantage, or it will give you even more advantage. Mas advantageous po sa iyo yun if you had the property rented out, because technically the tenants would technically be paying your mortgage, and at the same time they would technically be paying the difference between your mortgage rate and inflation. Okay. Another good thing about real estate technically is that for most of the time, most often than not, real estate value always goes up, and they tend to be slightly higher, or they tend to go along with the inflationary rate of an economy or a country. Thus, if pamahal ng pamahal yung presyo, then equivalent po yan ng pamahal din yung rental fees ng mga property mo. So, if pamahal ng pamahal yung rental fees, then equivalent din yan na pamahal ng pamahal din yung value ng property mo. That is why real estate is one of the best things that you can actually invest in when you are young, at a fixed rate mortgage or at an adjustable mortgage for a lesser payment time. The third thing that you can invest in order for you to protect yourself in inflationary times is, of course, investing in gold and silver and other precious metals. At dito po pumapasok yung gold, silver, and other precious metals. Now, for that, I'm not really a fan of investing in gold per se or silver per se, okay? But if you base it through the entire history of precious metals, gold, silver, and all the other precious metals, they tend to go up as inflation goes up, and they tend to be slightly higher where inflation is. Not only that, naalala ko po yung lola ko na sinasabi, bumili ka ng alahas para protection yan sa iyo in caso mawalan ka na ng pera, isanla mo yung alahas. Now, that's the wrong way of doing it, okay? Now, technically, you can buy gold coins also from third-party market, or, third-party market. Ewan kung saan ka bibili no? But technically, you can still buy gold and silver from third-party. But my recommendation is to buy gold and silver certificates through a specific broker. And my friend Brian, which I will post his Facebook profile down below. I can refer you to him. I know he knows a lot of broker friends. If you're interested in investing in gold and silver also, he will be able to help you out. Of course, just to be clear, this video is not sponsored by U-Trade or by Brian, okay? This is just my way of helping you out. Really protect yourself against times like this. But wait, there's actually one more way to protect yourself against inflation, and ito po is 100% inflation-proof na investment instrument. But before we go on, please check the link down below for my other video which I just created. This channel is quite new. Don't forget to like and subscribe before anything else, and share this also to fellow entrepreneurs or fellow people or fellow Filipino people who might want to hear this kind of information. Now, the last kind of instrument that's really inflation-proof than stocks, real estate, or precious metals is what we call inflation-linked bonds, okay? Inflation-linked bonds is basically issued by the government, okay, which basically just goes a little bit higher. Ito po, 100%. This goes a little bit higher than inflation. That's why it's inflation-linked bond. So if inflation goes up, the bond value also goes up. If inflation goes down, the bond value also goes down. What's guaranteed though, the good thing about this is that this is guaranteed by the government. Inflation-linked bonds in the Philippines back in 2013, the government has issued inflation-linked bonds around 1.3 billion, I think, or $1 million. I could be wrong. Around 1.3 million inflation-linked bonds to cover the deficit of the government during that time. So, yung inflation-linked bonds is parang yung gobyerno nangungutang sa'yo, eto yung 1,000 pesos ko, ibalik mo na lang to sa akin kung whatever my money is worth, maybe a few years or a few months down the road with inflation considered. So, it's the best form of instrument right now to protect yourself against inflation. However, I don't believe, I could be wrong. If you know anything about inflation-linked bonds, I would be more than happy to get the information from you. Post a comment down below about if you know anything about inflation-linked bonds. As far as I know, I think it's not being offered right now. Hindi pa po siya ino-offer. So I think we just have to wait for the government to offer it again to us. And that's basically it. Tapusin ko muna tong trabaho ko dito. And I hopefully this video has helped you out. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and comment down below about what you think, or if there are other things that you think can protect you against inflation, can protect you and your money against inflation. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon. Bye.